brought my pencil. Give me something to write on, man.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Meridian Learning and Development Hangout with Fistful of Talent. My name's Allison and I'm with Meridian, and today we're going to be talking about how to get your employees, how to get your managers to encourage your employees to take learning and development activities. So today I'm joined by Chris Dunn, who is the CHRO of Kinetics and the founder of Fistful of Talent, and his colleague Ginger Knighton, who is a talent specialist at Kinetics. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Doing good, Allison. Doing good. Hope you're doing well as well.
I'm doing good. I can't complain over here. Do you guys want to maybe introduce yourselves really quickly before we dive into some of these questions?
Yeah, I'll let Ginger go first.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Ginger Knighton. I'm a training specialist at Kinetics. I've been in the training and development world for probably going on, oh my gosh, I think 8 years now. So it's my passion. I love it. I'm really happy to be on board with Kinetics as well. So excited about the topics for today too.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
And I am Chris Dunn. I'm a colleague of Ginger's at Kinetics. I'm a CHRO and a partner at Kinetics, founder of Fistful of Talent, lover of all things Meridian, I might add. I'm brown nosing a little bit, Allison. I'll throw it back to you.
All right, cool. I'm so excited. I really like this topic, and I think we have a lot of fun things to cover. So my first question is, how can you show the impacts that learning and development can have on your employees' performance?
It's a good one. Ginger, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, when I was first looking at this and kind of reviewing this information, the first thing that came to mind was something that I tried at my last position, and it was involving the direct managers to understand what that growth opportunity is. So we would do trainings, and then we would create a manager guide. That manager guide would then sort of give them the takeaways, tips, tricks, what the behaviors are that you're looking for so they can follow up with them on one-on-ones. So the manager's now involved and actually reiterating and recapping that training, so they have it firsthand.
Yeah, I like that because a lot of times there aren't metrics available, right? You may not even have, like, performance management is very, very tough, right? And it's hard to figure out how somebody's performing, much less how, like, what impact a certain training thing had. So I like Ginger's idea in terms of giving the managers tools. And Ginger, I'll throw it back to you for a second. You can clarify this. Almost an expectation that the manager is going to be involved in taking what they learned in training and then helping them remember to apply it in whatever job they're in, right?
Absolutely. It's an expectation, I'll say, from learning and development, but it doesn't always come as a first expectation from the manager once their staff has joined a training. So sometimes they need a little bit of help and guidance to understand how do I, as their manager, apply what they've learned in that training.
Yeah, and I think if you combine that, like, one of the things I've always liked to do is to talk to people about, hey, what can an employee in question do once they go through this training? And then if you kind of take that set and you give those expectations that Ginger described to a set of managers, I think one of two things is going to happen, right? They're either, and this is like where the cynical, jaded, like, part of me comes in, they're either going to do everything to, like, you know, just kind of embrace this, like, learning environment and try and make sure that the employees apply the skills, or they're not. And typically speaking, if they don't, and someone like Ginger or myself comes back to them and says, well, hey, we gave you the guide, right? How are they doing? Well, they're either going to give you, like, honest feedback, but in the case that they didn't have time to get to it, Ginger, what's your experience in terms of what they're going to tell you? Like, if they had an expectation that they had to be involved and they really weren't involved, like post-training initiative, what are they going to tell you? Are they going to tell you that it's going great or it's going bad?
I guess it depends on the manager. I've probably heard more of it's going great because in my experience, the manager didn't really follow up on their end of the bargain. So you may not be really getting the whole truth. So you definitely want to follow up with, well, what are the exact behaviors that you're seeing based on what we discussed on that particular training that's going so great? And then that can kind of lead to a different discussion.
Yeah, and I think, you know, and I said I was a little cynical or jaded, but that's the reality, right? And, kind of the topic of this hangout is, how do we gain buy-in? How how do we get managers to be more supportive of learning and development? And you want that support whether they're going to hold up their end or not. I think it's just human nature. If you do what Ginger described, to say, hey, this is a way that you can take this training goodness and deploy it on your team, and you got to help us like post initiative. Even if they don't do that, they're still going to be supportive of your training function. Now, hopefully that's like 5 to 10% of the population. My experience says that it's a little higher than that, but we'll take it any way we can get it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is all great. I did want to say one thing for, we have a lot of people that are viewing this event live. If you have any questions that you want to ask Chris or Ginger during the Hangout, you're more than welcome to go to the right side. I think it's the right side of your screen. There's a Q&A panel if you have any questions you want to ask them. Next question you kind of touched on was executive buy-in, and how do you get the leadership team to kind of put pressure on managers to embrace learning?
Yeah, I'll start with this one. And what I love to do just to get executive buy-in, I think it's important to know like what you're after there. So let's say that you're in just an environment of managers who maybe are neutral related to training and development. I think what you want to do, let's say you're in a big like call center environment and nobody has time to pull people off the phones and actually put them through training. Like, my favorite like tool to get executive buy-in to put pressure on all those managers is to really do like a needs analysis with that executive. So you want to go in, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but you want to go in and you want to say, hey, what do you see? What do you think you need? And really you just build on that until really like the executive has kind of built the wish list. And if you know,
Did we lose Chris? I think we might have lost him. Let's just hold on for a second. Ginger, do you have anything that you might want to say? He usually joins back off in this.
Like starting the communication package with, hey, I was talking to Allison, your VP of customer care. I mean, I'm guilty of that, and I think if you approach it in the needs analysis way, you're going to be in great shape. Ginger, what have you done in the past?
Yeah, that's usually where I've started. Absolutely, is the needs analysis, and you want to know your audience and who you're talking to. So what's most important to that executive leadership, and that's usually cutting man hours or cutting costs. So trying to get that buy-in and having those numbers and maybe some of that research ready and prepared, saying if we do this training, it can cut X amount in cost or man hours. What can we do to get your managers to help us get on board with that? So I've actually done that in the past, and it's had pretty good turnaround.
One of the things I wanted to add to that was sometimes if you go and you do that needs analysis and you ask open-ended questions, there are times when that executive is going to give you like a hot button issue to them that's not your hot button issue. And from a political perspective, even though as a learning and development professional, you may know that that's not like a top priority, sometimes to get the ball rolling and to get that executive buy-in, you've got to let them have their pet project, and you've got to deliver on that in order to get broader buy-in from that executive and broader sponsorship so you can get to the stuff that you know really needs to happen. I think too often times, Ginger, Chris, we may know what we need, what needs to happen, and we may hear like that pet project, we may push back a little bit, or we may go away from like involving that executive. Sometimes you just have to eat that pet project and deliver on it to get broader support over a 2 to 3 year period. Ginger, have you had any experience with that?
I've had lots of experience.
I bet you have.
And it's reciprocity, is really what it comes down to.
That's right.
If you know that you really want to push this initiative because it's going to be the betterment of the company, you may have to do a little extra work, stay a little late, work a little harder to get that pet project completed. So now you've got the buy-in and you've built that reputation that you can get that stuff done and deliver.
That's right. That's right.
All right, I think that's fantastic. Switching gears a little bit, are there things that you can do with your learning platform that make learning accessible and front of mind?
Ginger, I'll let you start with this one.
So let me make sure I understand the question. So keeping the learning platform front of mind. So always thinking about having learning opportunities available. Is that what we're kind of?
Yeah, maybe like how to drum up more demand for learning, make people more interested in engaging in learning and development activities.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I've had a good amount of experience with this as well. We did at my last company what we call road shows, and we basically went and had almost just like booths set up throughout the company, even traveled to some of the satellite locations, and just basically let them know what we can deliver. Here's what we've delivered in the past. Here are the results of those trainings, how to get in touch with us, anything that they need we can do for them. So basically just promoting ourselves and letting them know what we can produce for them. A lot of the times they don't realize what they can come to you for help. They don't realize the things that sometimes a training and development team can produce, since it may fall out of the standard box of training and development. So making that known to the rest of the company in kind of a fun roadshow marketing way worked really well for me in the past.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, you really just have to think more like a marketer. And, my experience, I think Ginger's pretty good at this at Kinetics, but in my experience, not all training and development professionals think about marketing their own services and think about that being top of mind. You think about what a really good training and development professional is good at. Well, they're good at curriculum design. They're probably good at delivery because they have a lot of experience with that. They're good at the needs analysis that we just talked about before, but they're not necessarily great at promoting themselves and everything that both them as individuals and collectively as a department that they can do for the business. So when you think about a marketer, you've got to think about, hey, do you have collateral like available to talk about what your offerings are? Are you taking, testimonials, I guess is the best word for it, from actual like attendees of your training and sending those out systematically? It's not things that have to take a lot of time, maybe a little prep work up front, and then it's more just kind of like feeding whatever communication system you have in your company, whether that's email, whether that's an intranet, however you do it. It's just like always thinking about, hey, how can I take this really happy customer that came through one of my training modules, and how can I get them to talk about all the good stuff they got out of it, and as a result of that, make other people want more of that. I just think at the end of the day, learning development people, trainers, we don't think about ourselves as marketers, and we probably should more.
Yeah, I'm in marketing, and I think that a lot of people underestimate the value of transparency when it comes to communication and
Sure.
being able to, you had it and it went really well and that event was great, but you kind of forget to take it one step forward and communicate that.
Hey, Allison, I want to jump on that real quick. I want to ask you a follow-up question. So you're a marketer. And you work with a lot of companies from a learning development perspective. When you say transparency, talk to us a little bit more about what you see works best. Like, what do you mean by transparency, and where does that come into play, and just in terms of like marketing offerings from a learning development perspective?
I think when I say transparency, and what I mean by that is being able to take those testimonials and feedback from people, because I think in any job that you collect so much data and information, but you sometimes don't know what to do with it. So taking that feedback and listening to the people who are taking the training courses, and then kind of moving on, taking that information and applying it to how you can make those better, or you could extend them more, or certain things like that. It's really important.
Right.
But for transparency, I think we forget to communicate things, especially within organizations. You operate in silos, and so you're so heads down focused on training and development that you forget that the people outside of your bubble aren't as aware of all the great things that you're doing, and you're not like having them shine as much would be.
Yeah, I got it. And one of the things I would add to that is that I think you get points. If you want to attract people to your learning and development function, you get points if you become a little less formal, and if you really talk and kind of acknowledge how hard work can be, because it can be really hard, especially if you're in a customer-facing position. And however you market yourself, if you're willing to talk about that, and you're willing to like acknowledge how hard it is, and even have some fun with it, I think people come in with an open mind and are more likely to engage you on what you can do for them.
Absolutely. All right, that's the last of the questions that I had. Is there anything else that you wanted to follow up with?
Ginger, anything on your end?
Final remarks?
I think too, also with the kind of last remarks about the marketing thing too, which I think is really important and has been really successful as well, is when you are marketing your trainings to individuals, having that other information there to let them know what you can produce and how long it takes to produce what you want to do. So that way they come to you knowing that I want this particular training and it's going to take X amount of hours to create and then this amount of hours to deliver. So expectations are set pretty good from the get-go. So that's been really successful in my past experiences as well.
And I know we've got a couple of minutes, right, Allison?
Mm-hmm. Take as much time.
So one of the things I would tell you, so I'm an HR professional by trade, and I've got a deep interest in learning and development. One of the things I would tell you, like we're talking about how do you get managers to be more supportive of your learning and development function. One of the things that HR people aren't very good at, and I think training and development people follow this a little bit because we're built to the same ilk. We're different in some ways, but we're similar in many ways. I think one of the things we're not good at is really like leveraging people into being supportive of our function. Let me give you an example. So a lot of training and development professionals, as well as HR people, wouldn't be very responsive to like scoreboarding out what manager in an organization uses the training and learning development function the most. So for example, when it comes to completed modules, really the proof's in the pudding. You know which managers, like if Ginger rolls out a voluntary, like hey, this is available, you don't have to use it, but it can really provide benefits to you. If she rolls out a training module, you know who the most supportive people are because they're the folks who maybe Ginger has developed a relationship with, or even if she hasn't, they're the folks that are like, hey, I'm going to get this for my people because it will help them in their job, and they'll know I'm supportive of them from a learning development perspective. We're going to work out like who goes when and all the time to that, but then you're going to have like the flip side of that. You're going to have the grumpy line manager who really doesn't have time for that. He or she's really focused on the metrics and on availability, and there's absolutely no time for learning and development. Well, HR people and L&D people, we don't play hardball enough, and I think one of the things we have to consider more is how do you create a scoreboard that will put inherent pressure on managers in the field to use you more. And nobody likes to be last. There's a Ricky Bobby quote from Talladega Nights, right? If you're not first, you're last. Nobody likes to be last, and nobody likes to be like made an example of. But I think there's a lot of like subtle ways you can push that information out in the organization. For example, here's your top 10 people. Well, you didn't name the fact that Ricky wasn't one of the top 10, but there's only 20 managers in the organization, and it naturally implies the question, why wasn't Ricky part of that leader scoreboard? I don't think we leverage people enough, either in HR or learning and development. I think that's kind of part of negotiation, and it's part of using what you have to gain that managerial buy-in that's so important.
Yeah, we did something kind of similar to that. It was a little less obvious of a scoreboard, but at the beginning of each quarter we would sit down with each of our stakeholders and basically ask what are your training needs, what do you need this year. We'd create a big roadmap for the year, and then we'd go back and share it again with all of our stakeholders, and you could obviously see which managers were really utilizing our team and which weren't.
Right.
It was kind of funny. You saw the behavior shift a bit, like, oh, well, I may be interested in that training too, or that one, or that one. So then also you're allocating your resources a little bit better as well. You can double up and read training, which saves a lot of time also. And then you're marketing yourselves as well as, here's what I'm producing for the rest of the company.
Right.
You're not taking advantage of that, this precious resource.
And hey, just like thinking about the executive level, last comment, and I'll throw it back to you, Allison. A great way to do it is to do something broad that doesn't cause people to be publicly embarrassed, but then give the whole scoreboard to the executive in charge of a group. Mm-hmm. And say, hey, by the way, I come to you, it's consultative, and here's what's going on, and by the way, here's the people that are using it. Unfortunately, here's the people who are not. please don't call them out publicly in this, but I'd love for you to help me influence these people to use the resources that all of you have at your disposal. So I think you can give the full scoreboard behind closed doors to an executive, and that's a great way to get some implied pressure in the organization to be more supportive of learning and development.
Yeah.
I think this is great. Thank you guys so much. I apologize to everyone who's watching for the connectivity issues. These things have a tendency to go a little crazy sometimes. So I appreciate you guys sticking through it, and I really thank you so much for joining us. We do these every month, so look out for the next Learning and Development Hangout, Fistful of Talent. Take care.